Hey guys, Dave here. Welcome to the Centurions Review, the punk rock band of wargame review institutions. This is the Big Red One. I'll be showing you how this game works, and then after that, Len and I will give a review of it. But it's called the Big Red One, the game of the 1st Infantry Division at the Battle of the Bulge. That's not what it was originally called. Originally, it was released as just Bulge, so it looks like they're trying to make money off the Big Red One, the movie, by having a game related to it. So they just took an existing game and renamed it. So we'll talk about how you get victory points and win the game first, and then we'll talk about how the game is played. You'll get your victory points either for each enemy combat strength point eliminated, both sides get that, and then the German player receives victory points for exiting supplied units off the map. So like this unit here has a strength points of 6. So see these little spaces here that say like ×2 and ×4. If he exits at the ×2, it gives 12 points. If he exits at the ×4, it gives 24 points. And these victory point exiting spaces are all over the map. There's some on this side too. For each turn, you can actually win every turn it's possible to win in this game, which is highly unusual. On the first turn here, you'll see it says 12 and 2. The 12 means if the Germans get more than 12 have 12 more victory points than the Allies, they automatically win on that turn. And the 2 means if the Germans 2 or less victory points, or excuse me, they only have 1 or 2 victory points more than the Allies, they instantly lose. That's a problem because I played this a bunch of times, and on 2 of the games the Germans lost on the first turn. Alright, this is the initial setup. The units written on them is just their combat strength points. Let's go over some of the nuances of the rules. The movement allowance for everything is 5, and the stacking limit is 1. There's no exceptions to that. It's just a stacking limit of 1. There's 2 types of combat. Well, actually, let's go to the sequence of play first. I'll do that first and then explain the 2 types of combat. So the game starts with the weather determination phase. You can either do the historical weather or roll for the weather, and then air mission assignment. We'll get into air in a bit. Ground support combat, air patrol resolution, and then the Allied air interdiction placement, and then German air interdiction placement. All right, and then the German turn begins, where the German starts with the pre-movement combat phase. In the pre-movement combat phase, you may attack adjacent units. You don't have to. And then the German phase, and then the German post-movement combat phase. So there's 2 combat phases for each player each turn. In the post-movement combat phase, they have to attack anything they're adjacent to. All right, and then the Allied player turn begins, where they have a resupply phase, pre-movement combat phase, Allied movement phase, Allied post-movement combat, and then victory point determination to see if anyone just won the game. And then game turn indication phase, where you just show what game turn you're on. Before we go further, I want to show one problem with this game. Keeping track of victory points, it includes victory point markers for the Allies, but not for the Germans. So that's a problem. You're going to have to make up victory point markers for the Germans yourself. Either that or just write the victory points on a piece of paper. Alright, some of the other nuances of the rules. Only German units can exit the map. Road movement, if you're a leg unit, you pay 1 movement point per hex. If you're doing mechanized movement, obviously you have to be a mechanized unit, then you pay 1/5 of a movement point per hex. So if you're an armored unit, you can move really fast. As you see, there's a ton of roads here. That's if you're not in the zone of control. We'll get into that in a minute. And then there's Allied bridge interdiction. If Allies are close to a bridge, it interdicts it, meaning that it will cost more for the Germans to pass over that bridge. Alright, as far as combat resolution, there's 2 combat results tables. You got the primary one, which obviously is deadlier, and then you have the secondary one. Generally, if you're forced into attacking because you're in an enemy zone of control and you have like 1 strength point and they have like 3. You're obviously going to want to use the secondary combat results table because you're less likely to die in your own attack. So that's where it becomes advantageous. Generally, in the pre-movement combat phase where you may attack, you only attack if it's beneficial, then you usually use the primary combat results table because it's deadlier. In this game, you can lower the combat differential if you wish. I never did that, but the option's open to you if you want. Attacker eliminated. In this, only 1 attacking unit is eliminated, so if you have 2 units attacking, they don't both die. Exchange, same as usual, but if the attacking unit is stronger than the defender, it is not eliminated. The author said there's some people, who like to take the 7 strength unit here and pair it up with the 6 strength unit and do attacks with that, and then whenever they get equal eliminations, they always survive because generally they're going to, both of those units will be more powerful than the allied units. Alright, as far as reinforcements, there are a ton of them in this game. Most turns there are reinforcements. So you're actually starting with only a small portion of the forces on the board. Alright, the counters will say where the reinforcements enter which side of the map. The British, when the British come on, there's some special rules for them. They can't cross the Meuse River or move more than 5 hexes from their entry point unless a German unit comes within 2 hexes first. So if the Germans stay away from the British, they really can't participate in the game. Allied units can't enter the map from hexes where Germans exited. So if a German exited here and an Allied unit's supposed to start on the north, he may not enter on that hex for the rest of the game. Alright, there's supply rules, and this basically you're in supply if you're within 5 hexes of a road. On this map I do not believe there's anywhere on this map that is further than 5 hexes from a road. As you can see, the whole map is filled with roads, and the road has to connect to a friendly map edge without entering an enemy zone of control. And of course, a friendly unit would negate an enemy zone of control. If you're out of supply, it's not as bad as in some games. You roll for your movement points then, and you can only use the secondary combat results table. Oh, one thing about the secondary combat results table I forgot to mention. If you use that, you have, let's say you have 2 units in your zone of control, you have to attack the more powerful unit. Alright, each turn when you determine how many air points you get, which depends on the weather, there's certain things you can do with air points. You have ground support, combat air patrols, air interdiction, and resupply. The resupply is for out-of-supply units. Ground support assists with an attack. It gives you a column shift. And then there's a combat air patrol. Combat air patrol means you have that in the air, and if the enemy attacks you using ground support, you can use your combat air patrol to neutralize the ground support aircraft. And then there's air interdiction, where you can pick a hex on the map. Usually, generally that would be in a road, and you can cut that hex so it cuts their supply line. If you do that on the same turn, if the enemy moves another unit into that hex, then it removes the air interdiction effect. But you use that when German units get away far over here and you want to stop them, so you'll try and get them out of supply by doing an air interdiction. Oh, there's one thing I forgot. That is, there's German first turn surprise. That means on the first turn, the Germans on their pre-movement combat, they get 2 column shifts in their favor. And in post-movement combat, they get 1 column shift, if I recall correctly. Let me check the book there just to be sure. Yeah, just 1 on the post-movement. So that will theoretically allow them to do better in the attacks. That's basically how the game works. We'll go to the review now. Hey guys, David Len. We just played Samuel Fueller's The Big Red One. This originally was called the Bulge from SPI. What'd you think of it, Len?
This is not a good game. I made so many notes why I disliked it. Number one, the Americans don't get to blow up the bridges. Any bridges at all. As everybody knows, the damned engineers are the ones that stopped Joachim Piper, who's not in, he doesn't have a special unit. There's no town of Stavelot or Lunine Creek. The two airborne divisions move at infantry rate when they come in. They were riding on half-bed trucks, so they should be at least motorized. As a result, they don't come in until about Christmas time. And the 4th Armored Division comes in too early. It comes in, it got to Bastogne before, on Christmas, 2 days before Christmas. Didn't make it until the day after. Actually, I think day after, or they tried to make it for Christmas. The star of the game should have been the 1st Infantry Division, but its combat factor is 4, while the 30th Division is a combat factor of 6. Now, to understand why I'm griping about that is the 1st Division had this habit of having extra units. They thought they were more important than anybody else. What the game should have done, instead of just being a second-rate Battle of the Bulge game, they should have focused on the fighting in the North Shoulder. If there's one plus I got to say about this game is that it showed that the North Shoulder was the decisive part of the battle, because that was where the strongest Panzer Division was. And they won because he managed to make an opening in the north and was able to drive his armored units and a few others off the map for extra victory points.
I thought the game, as far as a Battle of the Bulge game, I didn't like it as a Battle of the Bulge game. If it just called itself a generic World War II combat game, it would have been all right. But as a Battle of Bulge, if you're going to play something this old, get something a little bit older. Avalon Hill Battle of the Bulge, which is a game I would only consider to be pretty good, but I thought that was far better than this as far as Battle of the Bulge games. And there's better games than both of those out there, but yeah, don't buy this game. Buy Avalon Hill Battle of the Bulge if you want an old Bulge game. The things I didn't like about it, here's the worst thing about it. Len and I played this once, and I played it twice on my own. Out of all those games, 2 of the times the game was won in the first turn. The reason being it was the Americans who won. Is there's a victory point level for each turn, and on the first turn it's 12-2, which means that if the Germans get 12 or more victory points, they win the game on the first turn, or if they get 2 or less, they win the game. Actually, it's not victory points, it's differential of victory points. So what was happening is the Germans were only destroying 1 or 2 combat strength worth of units on the first turn of several games, and the Americans didn't destroy anything. So they didn't have greater than 2, so they automatically lost, which I thought was ridiculous. Another thing I didn't like, you can't voluntarily retreat, which makes it historically inaccurate. And it really slows down the Germans, because if you have a 6-strength German armored unit and it hits a 1-strength American infantry unit, enters its zone of control, it's stuck there until you can either retreat the American unit or whatever. In this type of battle, when you had thin lines of infantry, the German tanks just went right over them and kept going and stuff. So that's not simulated in this because you can't move out of an enemy zone of control ever.
They should at least allow the armored units to move out of zones of control and move around it.
Another thing I didn't like, there's no way, there's just victory point markers for the British, not for the Germans, so you have to write that down or something. I guess they forgot to print those.
Allies.
And the way the way victory points are given in this game is you get 1 victory point for each combat strength of enemy unit you kill. or the Germans, when they exit the map at the designated hexes, those have either a ×2 or a ×4 on them, or a ×3, meaning that if you got like a 4 strength unit, it goes through a ×4 hex to exit the map, you get 16 points instead of 4. There was air power in this game. Didn't seem to have much effect. We just did it with the historical weather, and there was many turns where it was overcast and there was no air power. And the turns that they were, it didn't do that much. I mean, you can use them for interdiction to try and cut supply lines, but I don't know. Air power didn't have much of an effect on this game, in my opinion.
Well, actually, we ended around Christmas Day, so in the by that time there was overcast, so we were going to see very little. Air power would have little effect on us.
Mm-hmm.
So if we played longer, you would have seen the American fighters strafing your columns. So,
anything else to add, or?
Should have concentrated on the battles of the North Shoulder.
Oh, the game itself?
Yeah, instead of the entire campaign. Because then they could have had like the 1st Infantry Division, just the battles of the 1st Infantry Division. Having the counters and would be like either platoon or company level, and there are a few spots where they held the line, counterattacked, and and you could have pictures of Ian Marvin in there, and Mark Hamill, and the other people.
Mark Hamill from Star Wars was in the Big Red 1 movie, if you're wondering.
Yeah. No, that's the problem with being an actor. You tend to be... People only tend to remember one movie you're in.
Yeah, at least with him. Yeah, he's pretty typecast, so after that movie, I think he was on... that science fiction TV show, I forget what it was called, but other than that, he wasn't on very much.
He was on the Flash in the 80s. He was
I didn't know
Master.
That. Oh, okay.
And there's a few other appearances he's made. That's the problem, is that he did really good in the Big Red 1. Sometimes it's hard to remember this. This is Luke Skywalker we're talking about.
Yeah. And
I was thinking, how hard his career must be that after doing that movie, everybody talks, whenever they greet him, they say, "Hey, hi Mark, I saw you in Big Red 1, you did a great job." And then they add, "You been in any other movies lately?" Poor guy.
But this game, it looks like it just stamped on the title, the Big Red 1. I mean, it's just a Battle of the Bulge
military
game, really.
Action based on scenes from...
Yeah, from the movie.
No,
I don't think so. I think it was just made as a Bulge movie, or not Bulge movie, a Bulge game, and they just added the Big Red 1 to it later.
I always thought that they had that there, and just, we can possibly sell a few extra games if we tie it in with the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
The movie was good, but I don't think it was one of those blockbusters. It's one of those that actually, I've seen the director's cut, and it still stands up. Lee Marvin should have got an Oscar for that movie. So.
Anyhow, thanks for watching, guys. Next week we'll have a different game. It's not going to be World War II. We just played 4 World War II games in a row. Maybe it'll be science fiction. I'll find something. Have a good evening.